But why, though? What's up, guys? Alphonse here, and here we are to do a nice little breakdown / discussion on the idea that Itadori Yuji is, in fact, always been a finger of Sukuna, and not something that kind of turned into something reminiscent of a finger of Sukuna. No, the man was born with it. We have a whole lot to talk about in so little time, so let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Heading me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, I have 10 fingers. Get it? 10 fingers. So I have 10 fingers. I'm assuming most people also have 10 fingers. I know there are people who are born with less fingers. I know there are people who are born with more fingers. But on average, 10 fingers. But we also know something about Ryoma Sukuna. He actually, has 20 fingers. Of course, not as of recent, considering his hands are literally chopped off, but still, he had 20 fingers. That's pretty important. Remember, that Ryoma Sukuna had 20 fingers. So, apparently, no, he didn't. He had 21 fingers, because we find out early on within chapter 257, according to Sukuna himself, then that soul wandered and fused with Genjaku. The cursed objects that are Sukuna's fingers were sealed in Yuji Itadori, even though he was born as a player in the culling game. I suppose that was necessary to strengthen the vessel. So, here's the thing. This translation makes it a little bit vague, but apparently, this isn't just John Wary saying this, apparently the more reputable translator, Enlightening, said that this is actually the case. That Yuji was born with a finger of Sukuna, at least from my understanding of it. And, this is weird. Very weird. Don't get me wrong. The idea that Itadori essentially became a Sukuna finger isn't exactly new. We find this out not here, but here. Apparently, according to Shoko, he's just like a cursed object steeped in Sukuna's cursed energy. This was established back in 220. It makes sense based on how much time he was literally fused with Sukuna. Sukuna brings up the idea of their souls being fused down to like a astral level, so it makes sense that Yuji would end up reflecting Sukuna in one shape or form, considering he was the lesser of the two souls in that scenario. So obviously when he had his soul interfused with Sukuna, he would start to mimic it, but apparently he was born that way. And the reason I say this is important is because, we know that Sukuna only supposedly had 20 fingers. And we know where every single one of those fingers went, kind of, but not necessarily, which makes this weird, but not impossible. What do I mean? So, we obviously know 15 fingers of Sukuna existed in 15 finger Sukuna. This Sukuna that we see from the feeding all the way back in Shibuya, all the way up to the point of the transfer of Megumi, was 15 fingers. But with the context that Ryoma Sukuna actually had an extra finger lying around that was inside Yuji Itadori from the start, as he was born with it, apparently, no, this is a 16-finger Sukuna. And then we know that Ume, according to they themselves, is unable to find the last finger. Remember, this is before Ume learns about the idea that Itadori was born within a finger. And we know that at the time, that Sukuna had 15 fingers. But add that 15 for the one that Yuji already innately was born with, that becomes 16. And Ume, when they say they were unable to find the last finger, that means they fed 4 fingers to Sukuna. 4 of them. 4 fingers. But if Sukuna, when he was 15 fingers, was actually 16 fingers, then doesn't that mean that there's a 21st finger? Where did it come from? That's the main thing that I'm so weird about that translation, which is apparently the case. Once again, I thought when I first, admittedly, I'll be completely honest, when I first read the officials for John Wary, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, man. Like, I really didn't even consider it, because John Wary is just about as trustworthy as I am when it comes to translating Japanese. AKA, literally not at all. But with that being the case, no, it's been double confirmed. So there are just 21 Sukuna fingers now? I guess? I don't know. That's weird. And the reason I say that's so weird is because, well, once again, he just had 20 fingers. Unless the man had like an extra finger on one hand, I don't know where that came from. And the implication of this seemed, admittedly, kind of redundant. Like, I just excuse Yuji being as powerful and possibly having the potential equal to Sukuna as, being the kind of sort of pseudo cursed energy son of Sukuna. You know, the whole idea that since Jin and Sukuna were twins, and Sukuna ate Jin, and then the soul of Jin wandered about, and then was incarnated into Jin, and bada bing, bada boom, Genjaku got bada bing, bada boom, and then we had Itadori. I thought that was enough for Itadori to reflect Sukuna, reflect his cursed energy type, possibly reflect his cursed technique, as the inherited line and stuff like that, and also, he was literally fused with Sukuna. So, bada bing, bada boom, there's no real issue with it. But, like, now we've added this extra step, that, no, Yuji was born with a finger. Which just makes things weird. So, like, does that mean when this transfer ended up happening back in 212, was this actually a 16-finger transfer? Because, like, notably, Sukuna doesn't even seem to mention the idea that, oh, don't worry, Uraume, despite you only handing me 4 fingers, I'm technically already at 20 fingers. No, he doesn't say that. He's just like, whatever, the last one's still missing. It'd be like that when it'd be like that. I assume Gojo has it. So, I'm not sure. Did he not know? When did he find out that apparently Yuji was born with a finger? Did that finger and its power and its soul amount actually end up getting transferred over when this whole Pinky transfer ended up happening and, you know, Megami was force-fed it? I don't know. Does the current Yuji still have remnants of that finger on top of the residual cursed energy that he gained from being with Sukuna? I don't know. It's just very weird. Once again, this is I kind of feel the same way that I feel about the Daddy Kuna twist as I do with this twist. Because I feel like it kind of just makes things more confusing. Like, did Kenjaku make another finger from Sukuna's remains and seal that extra bit of soul away and then keep that on him for himself and then slide it out somewhere? And by slide it out somewhere, I mean slide it in somewhere so it could slide out somewhere in Yuji? I don't know. It's kind of weird. And here's the thing. A lot of people have been giving Gege props because this kind of puts a new perspective on this scene right here, all the way back in chapter 1, where Megami ends up sensing the raw power of Sukuna. In the anime, they dramatize it a whole lot more, but in the manga, at least, it just goes with Yuji passing Megami, and Megami's like, Nani Daisuke Sukuna, the presence of the cursed object. I can feel it even stronger now. But once again, a lot of people just pointed out, well, you know, it could have just been the residuals, as residuals are an established mechanic, and Megami himself even rationalizes it as residuals at the time. Essentially, he chased the cursed energy lingering in the box, but now people have taken this as a recontextualization that the finger was always inside Yuji. But then once again, that raises the question, how come if he was born with a finger, did he not have that sensory strength all the time? Like, why was it only in this passing moment that Megami apparently felt the finger that was inside Yuji and not any time before? Why did Yuji not innately have cursed energy? If he had the finger inside of him the entire time, I legit don't know. And once again, the whole idea of this isn't just for, like, logistical purposes of Sukuna having 20 fingers versus not having 20 fingers, and the possibility of whether or not that finger left Yuji when the transfer ended up happening back in 212, but also it kind of raises the question of, like, so I guess Gojo did fight a 20-finger Sukuna? If it did end up transferring? Like, if this is what we learn, at least in 220, not 222, but what we ended up learning in 220, that this whole steeping idea versus an actual inborn idea is still the case, then hypothetically you still have both, but then that means Gojo did fight a 20-finger Sukuna. But that also means 21-finger Sukuna is kind of a thing, but as a byproduct, that also means kind of a 22-finger Sukuna is kind of the thing. Because remember, Sukuna, quote-unquote, ends up compensating for the missing finger through eating the mummy, which had external amounts of cursed energy. But if this Sukuna, by eating the 4 fingers Uraume gathered for him, but they couldn't find the last finger because they assumed there were 20 fingers, doesn't that mean that Sukuna kind of was at like 21 fingers when fighting Gojo? Because then that last extra finger that Gojo apparently had access to and fed to Yuta just was once again an extra. So technically we've been fighting a 21-finger Sukuna? But does that not necessarily mean anything? Because would it still be a fraction of Sukuna's soul that just got split extra? So instead of being divided into 20 pieces, it was actually divided into 21 pieces? Or hypothetically 21 plus the mummy? I don't know. Once again, this is a twist or reveal that kind of just makes things more weirdly complicated, and I don't think you needed to add it. Like, I was okay with Daddy Kuna. I find Daddy Kuna funny. Or Unc Kuna. I know a lot of people, biologically, to give a quick rundown for anyone who's still confused on the Daddy Kuna versus Unc Kuna, why I call him Daddy Kuna and not just Unc Kuna. The reason I said that, in Cursed Energy rules, twins are one person. So Jin, despite being an entirely separate individual, he still is technically Sukuna by the laws of curse energy, and we know the laws of curse energy tend to override things. So even though Jin is Jin and not Sukuna, Jin still equals Sukuna in the laws of cursed energy. Thusly, Sukuna equals Jin, the transitive property. That means Yuji is simultaneously Sukuna's biological uncle, but also his actual father, based on the rules of cursed energy. To get that explained. If people still don't understand it, I don't know. I could probably go more in depth and do a proper explanation video on Yuji's whole family tree, which I am planning and working on right now. But that's the thing. I'm not sure why this was added. Unlike the Unkuna thing. I think the Unkuna thing adds extra layers and clarification. Unkuna or Daddy Kuna makes things make more sense. Yuji's potential, his access to Shrine, his affinity for black flashes, his natural progeny status with cursed energy, all that gets further explained by Unkuna. Daddy Kuna. Wonderful. Why was he born with a finger? It just makes the series weirder. Like, I guess the finger was going to be activated eventually somehow. Like, since he was born with a finger, he would never have to worry about not having a finger. So, like, maybe the whole scenario that was set up in Chapter 1 wasn't even necessary. Like, he just didn't need to have a finger. Maybe upon, like, Mahito's awakening, then... Or not Mahito's awakening, but Kenjaku absorbing Mahito, then maybe regardless, Sukuna would have awoken inside of Yuji. But then why was Yuji registered as his own individual in the Culling games then if he was just gonna always be a Sukuna vessel? I don't know. It's weird. I don't really get this addition. Like, narratively, on a mechanical level, I don't get what this adds, and I don't get why certain things now don't happen. Like, why did Yuji not have cursed energy? Why was he not sensible as a vessel for the King of Curses until after he ate the second finger, or what would be his second finger despite being his first finger? Why are we now making 22-finger Sukuna a thing? I know not logistically. The mummy doesn't count as a finger. But as Sukuna himself says, don't worry, I can compensate for one digit. So he compensates for one digit. And then thusly has a spare digit. Because there already was an extra digit that was stored in Yuji that was most likely transferred over. Because once again, you could make the argument that technically nothing changes. Sukuna still ended up being a 19-finger plus the mummy, which kind of made him a pseudo-20-finger, and there was no 21-finger, because in spite of the transfer happening smoothly, Yuji, getting taken over, I guess, and then having the finger torn off, and having that finger infused with all of Sukuna's soul and stuff like that was at least stored within Yuji, being force-fed to Megami, immediately leading into Maguna. Maybe you could argue some of the residue was still left, and he sort of just reverts back to the Yuji that we see in Chapter 1, where he doesn't have the markings or anything, but the finger's still there, but is deeply suppressed within his system, sort of fitting the whole cage criteria that Sukuna talks out at the beginning, or maybe one finger wasn't enough to manifest Sukuna, but the second finger ended up being enough for him to manifest. I don't know. Once again, this goes back and makes the series weirder. It makes characters stronger, though, technically. In a way. Like, technically, Gojo's now more impressive, because apparently he did fight a 20-finger Sukuna, if you think the cursed energy was transferred over completely when the transfer happened back in 212. And if you think that's the case, then, wow, Gojo's doing more impressive. Everyone's feats get, like, a slight level up, if you think fingers actually do have an implication on Sukuna's overall level of strength and aren't just like cursed energy, and we know cursed energy and strength don't necessarily immediately correlate, or at least not scale linearly. So, like, there's that. But I don't know. Once again, it just feels weird. I almost think that Gege threw this in to make sure that people were extra okay with Yuji being as powerful as he is. Because, like, one of the biggest things about 257, and one of the main critiques I've seen bouncing about 257, in spite of how I don't necessarily view this as a problem, a lot of people are kind of mad that Yuji's gotten this powerful so quickly off the band, off the black flashes, and people really don't like him awakening Shrine. They really hope he got something new and unique to himself. So I'm assuming maybe Gege thought this was a good way to circumvent some of that. Well, okay, if Yuji isn't just, as he said, steeped in his cursed energy, but also was literally born with a Sukuna finger, and was steeped in that cursed energy for literally his entire life, then of course he'd awaken Shrine in particular and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think it just causes too many retroactive problems, and now turns 20-finger Sukuna into 21-finger Sukuna, even though he only had 20 fingers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, and it doesn't add anything. Like, I agree that Unc Kuna or Daddy Kuna doesn't add anything on, like, a character level. because neither of the characters care about their familial relation. It's more so on a in-universe narrative justification for Yuji being that powerful kind of thing. Doesn't necessarily matter to anyone in-universe. It's not going to change any specific dynamics between Yuji and Sukuna. It's just going to change as we, the readers, view Itadori and his power growth and his relation to Sukuna. Which is interesting, but once again doesn't change all too much. This just makes things weird. Makes things more complicated. It makes things kind of dumber. And I don't like that. I'll be real. I really don't like this edition in particular. Making it so that 21 Finger Sukuna is a thing. I don't know. Because since it doesn't really add anything, and since Gege already went out of their way to establish that Yuji was steeped in his cursed energy as an excuse regardless, and the fact that he was fused with Sukuna regardless, there was already enough things that were set up in the narrative that didn't actively make things weirder by adding another finger that could have had the entire scenario fine. I feel like doubling down and saying Yuji was born with a finger only makes the narrative worse and more complicated for no external value. But it does make characters stronger depending on how you interpret the finger scaling, if you think finger scaling is a thing. So, power scalar W? But, like, everything else is kind of weird. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get why certain things operate in the way they do. I view it as this. It's an answer that raises more questions than it answers. And not in the good way. Some answers are meant to do that. A lot of answers about JJK are meant to do that. They're meant to answer something while raising more questions. This answers something that nobody asked and makes things more confusing. But that's what I think. Please let you guys in the comment section down below. Do you like the idea that Yuji was born with a finger, just innately, and he sort of possibly maybe gave it up in the transfer, maybe did not? Do you like the idea that there was technically actually 21 Sukuna fingers and then the mummy, meaning there could have been a hypothetical 22 finger Sukuna? Do you think the amount of cursed energy would vary regardless, and thusly maybe 20 finger or 21 finger Sukuna would be equal to 20 finger Sukuna because the soul was still split and the cursed energy was still split? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave finger licking good. Leave finger licking good in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 down a month. You get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You'll also become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 Patreon, $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, if you want to make a one-time donation or a one-time video request, the link to my Ko-Fi is in the description down below. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I would like to give a thank you to all $3 members: O'Connor Plays, Greyhound, Atkins Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, G Prosper, and Paris Arnold. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, and Igneel. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo and Sick Addiction. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $10 member, Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $10 patrons: Panda Goat, Joaquin, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patron, ChinaDoll09. And I'd like to give another gargantuan gargantuan I have no idea what that word. Thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.